He is Mitt Romney, the former governor of Massachusetts, who joins us for a very special version of our Playmaker segment, with, of course, my buddy, New York Jets owner Woody Johnson. And I should mention that you got a new book out, Governor. It's called No Apology, The Case for American Greatness. I love the title. But let's get to the first hit against you. And it's not just coming from Democrats. Some conservatives, the editorial page of the Journal, National Review saying it as well, that you set the stage for Obamacare. How do you respond to that?
Well, I can't possibly be the author of his plan. He never had the courtesy to call me and ask me how my plan was working. And none of his colleagues did either. But, you know, had they called me, I'd have told them what worked well in our plan and what didn't work well. And
let's focus on the second first. What didn't work well with Massachusetts?
First, let me make a couple points, which is ours is a state plan solving a state problem. And that's the first lesson that President Obama should learn. You don't want the federal government intruding its power in all the states, taking away the rights of states to do what the Constitution allowed them to do, which is to have powers not specifically enumerated to the federal government. So it's a state plan, number one. Number two, we didn't raise taxes on people. We didn't cut the funding for Medicare. Didn't use seniors, if you will.
Although your successor is raising taxes, he's raising the state taxes in order to pay for health care.
He's raising state taxes everywhere he can, like a lot of Democrats across the country love to raise taxes. Our bill did not raise taxes. It costs 1.5% of the state budget, and it's not perfect. There are a number of things that I think would be done better.
Like?
Well, for instance, I vetoed a provision in it that said that the insurance offered at our state has to have all sorts of mandates, mandated coverages, meaning you have to include all sorts of everything from in vitro fertilization to unlimited chiropractic and so forth. I said, no, no, no. Let the private market sort those things out. But if you will, my Democratic friends said, no, 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 we want to mandate those things. I think that was a mistake.
So now you have people who are only buying insurance for knee injuries and so forth right before they get the operation.
Well, actually, in Massachusetts now, virtually everybody has insurance. 98% of the population has insurance, which in my view is a good thing. For this reason, everybody in America today has health care. If they get sick, even without insurance, they get free care paid for by government. We said no more of that, no more free riders. We want people taking personal responsibility for getting health insurance if they can afford it, or in the bill I put forward, or paying their own way if they want to opt out of insurance.
One of the chapters in your book is called Entitlement Nightmare. And you talk about the fact that the entitlement part of the economy is getting so big and so expensive, including the people, you know, government employees, and over 30% of the economy now is controlled by the government. When does this get to the point where we have two questions? When does it get to the point where we're really in trouble and, you know, the Chinese don't buy our bonds anymore?
That can happen at any point. I don't think it's going to happen in the next few years myself, but it's very difficult to predict when the straw breaks the camel's back. When the world says, you know what, I'm not sure if America is going to be able to pay back what we're loaning to America with dollars that are worth anything. And when that happens and they stop buying our treasuries or they start wanting higher and higher interest rates, you find yourself... Then that kills the economy and you get yourself into a doom loop. And that's the fear.
Whenever you get government involved, it gets its fingers, its roots, as I was explaining at the beginning of the show, into everything.
Well, government is now giving everybody that's not insurance entirely free health care. So right now, not in Massachusetts, in this state and every other, if someone gets sick and that doesn't have insurance and they don't have their own money, they're not wealthy, then government pays for the total amount.
Even the treasurer of Massachusetts.
Hold on, let's finish the question. Government gives everybody that doesn't have insurance today now free care. It's being paid for by government. So we said, no, no, no. If you can afford it, you've got to buy insurance on your own. And about half the people can't afford it. They bought insurance on their own. No more government subsidy for them. Now the others, we had a sliding scale based on income. We said everybody should pay something. The folks that followed us in subsequent legislatures said, no, the poor shouldn't pay anything. In my view, everybody should pay something. That's my own view.
So, but only half are. And with the system, there is a sort of inevitability that takes place when you have government getting so involved in matters that had been taken care of by the private sector.
Perhaps wrong.
Ineffective.
David, what is happening in America today is the 15% or so that aren't insured are given free health care by government. That's what I think was the big insight.
The emergency room.
Because they go to the emergency room and get care.
But the costs of this new Obamacare, as I'm sure you would agree, far exceed the cost to most Americans that is being incurred by the emergency room visits.
Well, I think the president has made a huge mistake with Obamacare. I think Obamacare is a veiled attempt for the federal government to take over health care, to drive the private sector out of health care, to get private insurance companies out of health care, for the government to get in and run health care, and ultimately to create a single-payer system. That's where the president wants to go. That's what he said during his campaign. That, in my view, would be devastating to roughly 1/5 of the economy and take away the rights of American people to choose their course.
I was just going to play a little soundbite from the treasurer of Massachusetts, Tim Cahill. Of course, used to be a Democrat. He's now an independent. He's going to be running for the office. Let's see what he had to say about Massachusetts health care.
You know, I would warn people that if you do want the Massachusetts plan, and that's what the president's plan is, then you're going to have to pay an enormous amount of money, because this thing is a budget buster. And as I said, it would have put us in bankruptcy, or certainly would have put us in deep deficit were it not for the federal government.
Okay, so that's the rhetoric against the Massachusetts plan. And again, to which you would say?
Well, first of all, Tim Cahill is running for governor and is running on the basis if he wants to change the plan, which is just fine, but he has a stake in this. The total cost of the Massachusetts plan is 1.5% of the state's budget. Now, that's not exactly a budget buster, and it's not putting the state in bankruptcy. The state's income tax is a fraction of the income tax here in New York, for instance, probably about
But half. It is going up, the cost of health care. The cost of health care in Massachusetts is going up.
The cost of health care in Massachusetts, like the rest of the country, is going up. Massachusetts is a high-cost health care state, has been for some time. But let's go back. We can spend all of our time talking about Massachusetts health care. And the truth of the matter is, the people of Massachusetts should have the right to decide what's right for Massachusetts health care, and they did. And if they want to change it, they have the right to do it. That's the nature of a federalist society. But what the president is doing is taking away the right of the individual, of the states, to choose what they want to do. And that is an incursion of federal power into the states, which is an outrage. If people don't like Massachusetts' plan, fine. They could choose a different plan for each state. That's the idea of states being laboratories of democracy. But his big mistake was saying he's going to have the federal government take over the power of states. And I think those who oppose Obamacare are making a mistake by trying to say, oh, it's like Massachusetts. Like, no, Massachusetts is a state plan.
Yeah, should the next president and the next Congress attempt to overturn the Obama plan?
Absolutely.
And replace it with what?
Well, my own view is let states do what we were doing, what other states were doing. Let them come up with their own plans to care for their own individuals that are uninsured. Some decide to give out free care in hospitals. That's how most states do it. Others, as we did, said, no, if you can afford your own way, then you ought to pay your own way. But let states deal with this issue as opposed to the federal government, because I think you're absolutely right. The federal government, as they get into health care, will take it over and run it, and will cram down their prices on doctors and hospitals, and we'll see a deterioration of health care in this country. At the same time, a massive new entitlement that will ultimately cause extraordinary financial burden for our country.
Mitt Romney, great to see you here. The new book is No Apology, The Case for American Greatness. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it. Woody and I thank you both.